When a young boy is exploring a mobile home park, he has no idea he's about to find a mystery. Dozens upon dozens of mysteries. And then we take a look at the story of a young woman who grew up in a haunted house. And while that led to some traumatic and some repressed memories, everything was going to be fine. Because after years, her and her family are finally moving out. Well, what happens when the ghosts decide to move too? Today on Dead Rabbit Radio.
Actually, I'm a lot freaked out.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dead Rabbit Radio. I'm your host, Jason Carpenter. I'm having a great day. Hope you guys are having a great day too. I hope you guys are having tons of fun doing whatever you're doing. We got a lot of stuff to cover today, so let's get this big ball of paranormal rolling. Hey, walking into Dead Rabbit Radio Command right now. Everyone, get on your feet and give it up for Aiden Ricard. Woohoo, yeah, yeah, come on in, buddy. Woo! Streamers are coming down. He's like, what? Why am I getting the streamer treatment? You are officially, Aiden, the last name on this mysterious sheet of paper I found on the floor of my studio. It was from the 6th anniversary live stream special. To be honest, I don't know if you even donated. There's a little thing. I think you recommended a story and I wrote it down. I don't think you actually donated, but you know what? That's what the fluff is all about, right? Community. So because you happen to be, because your name appeared on this mysterious piece of paper on the floor of my studio, that's why you're our captain, our pilot this episode. If you guys can't support the show financially, if you can't magically appear on a list of donators, Aiden's like, I didn't give you any money. That's fine too. Just help spread the word about Dead Rabbit Radio. That helps out so much. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everyone you know. Dead Rabbit Radio is your favorite paranormal show. That helps the show grow. Aiden Ricard, I believe. It could be Kickard. But Aiden recommended, I think this is why I wrote his name down, recommended a story about a Cornish cryptid. Unless that's another YouTube user who donated money during the live stream. I'm pretty sure, Aiden, you wanted me to cover a Cornish cryptid, but I have not found one yet. Aiden, let's go ahead and get this party started. I'm going to toss you the keys to the Jason Jalopy. Everyone climb on board as Aiden fires up this rickety old chitty chitty bang bang car. We're leaving behind Dead Rabbit Radio Command. Aiden, why don't you drive us all the way out to a trailer park? We're leaving behind Dead Rabbit Radio Command. We're headed all the way out to this trailer park. It's in the state of Indiana. That's all the information we have on this. But I'm sure some of our Indianite listeners may be able to narrow it in, figure out exactly where the story took place. If you know of any trailer parks in the area, just drive around until you see one. We very helpfully have a photo of the trailer in question in this story, but we'll get to all that in a second. Don't be driving around Indiana just yet. Let's tell the story first. We're headed all the way out to this trailer park, and that's where we are about to meet a boy. We don't have his real name. We're going to call him Todd. Now, Todd is 11 years old when this story took place. Not too long ago, right? It's in the early to mid-2000s is the timeline we're looking at here. It's not an ancient story by any means. Todd said, listen, it's not that he necessarily had a bad upbringing, but he stated that he grew up pretty poor, and hand in hand with that sometimes, he didn't grow up in a great neighborhood. Now, just living in a trailer park doesn't necessarily mean you live in a bad neighborhood. I've known people who prefer trailer parks for the sense of community and not having to mow their lawn and all of that. But sometimes they do kind of live in the same realm, and that's Todd's position. He goes, I was 11 years old, my family was poor, we grew up in this trailer park, and this trailer park was in a bad neighborhood. And a lot of the people in my neighborhood in this trailer park were either retirees who were addicted to opioids or drug dealers who were selling opioids. I mean, hey, it's almost like an organic market. They're kind of ahead of the curve, locally grown, locally sourced. Your drug dealer's just 3 trailers away. retirees addicted to drugs, local drug dealers. This is kind of where Todd is growing up. And some of the trailers, no one's there. No, they'd have no residents there. It probably is hard to attract new people into a trailer park where it is an active drug sale. I guess unless you're a drug dealer or a drug user, you're like, oh, this place is paradise. It's like Uber before Uber even existed. You just yell out your window, more drugs, and then some guy comes running with a bottle of Vicodin. He goes, some of the trailers sat empty. One of them, in particular, was a trailer near the front of the trailer park. And that trailer, Todd said, had been empty for so long, no one remembers who ever lived there. It had always been empty. Todd definitely didn't know. He was a kid, but he goes, not even like the adults knew it. And it was right in the front. It was like right in the, when you drive into the front driveway to get into the trailer park, he goes, it was right there. But no one remembered who ever lived there. And the reason why it was notable, the reason why people would go, hey, who lived there? Because the place kind of gave off a bad feeling. Todd couldn't specify why, and he didn't get that feeling. But generally, the residents of the trailer park didn't go near this trailer near the front. I mean, obviously you had to drive by it. But that's why people would wonder, oh, hey, I wonder who lived there. I wonder what's going on there. I wonder who... Because it was something that people talked about. They all agreed that it was very unwelcoming. There's something wrong about that trailer. And that trailer in particular. And when you're dealing with a community of drug users and drug dealers, you know, laws are constantly being broken. So even for them to be like, I don't know, that place seems kind of sketchy, even though they're doing sketchy stuff, says a lot. It really does. Todd never really understood why, and one day he just, for no reason in particular, said, I'm going to go over there. You know, you're an 11-year-old boy, you're just kind of exploring, you're kind of out doing your thing, walking around, bored, probably. But he gets a little piece of wheat in his ear and goes, I'm going to go out to that abandoned trailer. I'm going to go out to that abandoned trailer that everyone stays away from. Because I'm Todd. And he does. He goes over there. He described it as gaudy, quote-unquote gaudy, with an orange trim. But other than that, it just looked like any other trailer. He walks over there and, it's just a little grassy area. You got this trailer home sitting on it, just like everywhere else in this community. When he walks over there and he's kind of walking around and he looks down and he sees a Hot Wheel. A Hot Wheel toy car sitting in the dirt. Huh? Oh, and there's a bunch of kids around here. There must be a kid who lost his Hot... Huh? Because as Todd is looking down at this Hot Wheel, he looks and nearby is another Hot Wheel. Another little metal toy car. And he's like, okay, well, the kids must have been playing over here, but that's weird because no one ever really... Huh? And he looks and there's another Hot Wheel sitting on the ground. He notices 12 little toy cars kind of strewn about this particular area next to this trailer home. And he's like, what? That's weird. Because he knows nobody comes over here. If you just found one Hot Wheel, maybe a kid lost it on this side of the lot, and then a squirrel grabbed it and was running around with it trying to eat it, and then left him here or whatever. But 12 of them? Odd, but not mysterious. Also nearby this trailer home is a 5-pound Geode, which he thought he had pay dirt with these 12 Hot Wheels. Well, here's the thing. He saw these 12 Hot Wheels. He didn't immediately start throwing them in his pocket. That will come soon. That will come very, very soon, because what are you going to do, man? It's 12 toy cars. He's poor. He finds, though, this 5-pound Geode that's been cracked open, and he says it was just loaded full of these orange, brownish crystals. And he's like, dude, this is dope. Like, this is the best day ever for an 11-year-old out adventuring on his own. He's like, I'm taking some of those Hot Wheels. I'm definitely taking that Geode. I'm going to figure out a way to carry a 5-pound Geode home while also taking some Hot Wheels. But then as he continues to look around, he goes around back of this trailer home, and the ground is littered with pennies. Now, the Geode and the Hot Wheels, that's cool. But pennies, that's cash. He begins to scoop them up. He notices most of them are underneath the laundry vent, but still, there's like just pennies kind of strewn about this area. And here's the thing, he knows no one lives here. He knows that this isn't somebody's property of whoever lives in this trailer home. Nobody's lived here as far as really anyone can remember. And he begins pocketing these pennies. It totals out to, because he adds it up later, I don't think he's keeping count as he's putting it. He's like, oh, what? Squirrel runs by, distracts him. He's like, oh, 1, 2. It ends up equaling $7.34. So he takes all the pennies. He has this oversized shirt, and he said he kind of used that as a basket. So he grabbed all the pennies. He grabbed the 5-pound Geode. His shirt gets ripped. He's like, I have to spend this money to get a new shirt. He has the pennies, he has the Geode, he grabs a couple of the Hot Wheels, and he carries them back to his trailer home. He then takes all of his pennies, this is when I think he counted them, takes all of his pennies, puts them in a jar, goes to his buddy's house in the trailer park. We'll call him David. Goes to see David and goes, dude, get you, your little bro, and your little sister, we're going shopping. Jingle, jing, jing, jingle, jing, 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 jing. He's jangling. He didn't actually say that he was flexing on him. He's like, well, look at all these pennies. But he tells David, I got all these pennies, bro. Let's go shopping. And Todd goes, we were so poor. I was poor. David's family was poor. Snacks? Snacks out of the question. He goes, we never got snacks. But now I have $7.34. Let's go crazy. So the four of them cross the highway. By the way, right, the oldest of them, 11? They cross the highway, and on the other side of the highway is the local grocer. And they walk in there, and they're like, sir, point us towards your sugariest items possible. And he's like, oh, yeah, let me let you guys in back. I'll let you see the good stuff. He goes, we spent all of the money, and we walked out with a ton of candy. Life's good. Life's good. These kids get to walk back across the highway. But they're all eating their candy. Todd says that then he told his best friend about this whole adventure, who I'm assuming is David as well. I don't know if he took his second best friend shopping and then just meets his real best friend. He goes, oh, by the way, we bought a ton of candy. I'm assuming it's David, but he doesn't specify though, so that's why. Todd tells David, hey, bro, you're not going to believe this, but, you know, all those pennies we bought all that candy with, I found those. I found all of them right behind that trailer home that everyone says is bad news. You know, right up front. And David goes, I don't know. That sounds kind of ridiculous. He has a stomach full of ho-hos. The evidence is in your stomach, David. Listen up. Todd goes, no, how do you think I got $7.34? Money doesn't grow on trees. It sprouts out of the ground. And I know it for a fact of it because I got it from the other side of that trailer. I just found it there. And David's like, I guess. I mean, I didn't even ask where the money came from. You told us you were going to buy me snacks. I was down. And Todd and David doesn't believe him. David totally doesn't believe him. And Todd's like, well, why would I make up such a ridiculous story? Why don't you come with me? I'll show you. David's like, yeah, I guess. It took some prompting. But then Todd's thinking in the back of his head, he's like, show him what? I picked up all the pennies. There's nothing on the ground. You go back to the dirt and you go, look, there were pennies there. But we spent them on delicious snacks. So him and David are walking over there, but Todd really doesn't know what they're going to see. Todd leads David back to behind the trailer home, and spread across the ground hundreds of pennies. David's like, dude, what the world? You were telling the truth. Look at all these. And he bends over and starts picking them up. And Todd's looking at him and he's like, what? I picked up all the pennies. Like, I was just here not too long ago. And I picked up all the pennies. I picked up over 700 pennies. And I know I picked them all up. I wouldn't leave one behind. And these pennies, Todd noticed they were so, like, weathered and dirty. He said it like they'd been there for years. But they weren't there just a while ago. Him and David picked up the pennies. They collected about $4.21 between the two of them. This trailer park no longer exists. It was torn down in 2018. But Todd did provide a photo with this. This story was posted on the X board. He started this thread about odd childhood memories. And he posted a photo, which I'm assuming he got off of Google Earth at some point or some website, but he goes, this is the trailer home. And while it doesn't look gaudy, it looks like every other trailer home, you do see like the orange stripe along the side. And you even see where it's at on the road. You can see where you would drive in past it to get into the rest of the trailer park. And people started asking him about this. And they go, so what happened to all, like, obviously you spent the money, right away to get snacks, but what about the other stuff you collected? Because in a way, this almost feels dreamlike. Because it just doesn't follow any pattern of logic. I mean, I know this is a paranormal show, but we have items manifesting, and then you remove them, and then more items manifesting. We'll get to that in a second, but people go, what about the Hot Wheels? What about the Geode? And he goes, you know what, that's actually really funny. He goes, the Geode I gave to a cousin. It's in a cousin's garden right now. But he goes, I still have one of those Hot Wheels all of these years later. He goes, in fact, the other day I was kind of looking around stuff in my place and I found one of those Hot Wheels and I looked at it and I was like, dude, I remember how I got this. I remember the day I found all of those pennies behind the trailer home. And that's what prompted him to post this online. Because he still has the Hot Wheel. It's a really interesting story. It does have some precedent. Long-time listeners of Dead Rabbit Radio are like, oh, okay, well, this story's probably not over yet. Maybe, maybe not. But this story does have some precedent. We've talked about stories like this in the past. But before I get to that, this borders on sci-fi. Like, this really does make you think of some sort of... It's funny because I kept wanting to think of, like, some sort of rift where things are being deposited. In the sense that when you lose something somewhere, things don't cease to exist. They go somewhere else. And in this case, they appear behind a trailer home. But, you know, the items, again, like, he never said we'd go there every day afterwards and we'd find these pennies. He never said that, oh, every so often we'd go there, there'd be a new cool rock or the latest Hot Wheel toys sitting there. It just seemed to be these items. The fact that people were uneasy with that trailer home does make you think that there is some sort of unseen force, like a vortex or some sort of portal type phenomenon that wards off most people. It's the same thing that most people, when they get to the Grand Canyon and they have that opportunity to walk across that glass bridge and stand on that glass, most people do not want to do that. We have a natural sense, even though it's built safely and it's been tested, I hope, right? They have a couple of elephants walk across it every day. Most people, when they come to the edge of a cliff, they go, whoa, nope, that's enough for me. But then you have other people who go to the edge of the cliff, and not only can they look down and marvel at how high they are and the beauty of nature, and all of that, sometimes they'll even want to scale it. Like, see you later, see you at the bottom, Mom, Dad, you little kid climbing down. No, Maurice, don't. You know what I mean? Some people adore mountain climbing. Most people don't even want to climb a set of stairs. But most people don't even want to look down at a certain height. And I think that's a survivability thing for most people. And then other people are called to that. And that could have been what was going on here. There was like an invisible threat, quote unquote threat, akin to staring down the Grand Canyon. Like being at the highest point and looking down at the bottom. Most people, nope. And I'm one of those people. I'm like, nah, I'm good. But Todd never really felt that way. He didn't understand why other people were kind of put off by the place. So he just walked over there and he got awarded for it in a sense, right? He got this money. But again, they don't say that he kept going back. So it wasn't like a perpetual thing. So that kind of makes me go, maybe not a vortex or a portal, or maybe it only opens and closes at certain times. And we don't know. If it was a vortex or a portal, it should still be there, whether or not the trailer home is there. It's just because you take a construction wrecking ball to a trailer home won't destroy the portal to the nth dimension. That's one possibility, but then there's an even darker possibility, and this is what we've talked about on past episodes. Interestingly enough, you don't see a ton of this in demon lore. I could be wrong, right? But it doesn't pop up a ton. They have Faustian bargains, making deals with the devil and stuff like that. In Jinn lore, when you look at the story of the Jinn from Islamic theology, which is an entity separate from a demon, sometimes their motives can intersect, but they're not demons in the sense that Christians think of demons. It's very interesting, like just the way you kind of navigate these two entities. They love dropping money off and letting people pick it up. That's actually one of the ways they can be invited into your life. Now, I don't know a ton about Muslim theology. I don't know a ton about Christian theology, even though I'm a Christian, but generally, demons are invited into your life in the Christian way by either purposely inviting them in, like worshiping them, or inviting them in very vocally, or by engaging in certain behaviors that can weaken your psychic resistance, which makes them able to secretly slip in. And that would be things like hardcore alcoholism, gambling addiction, pornography addiction, things like that. So you can either purposely invite a demon in, or you can weaken your... First off, your connection to God would be a main thing. But then allowing something else to kind of take precedent over your own well-being, your own physical safety, your family's safety for sure. And that's how these darker entities can influence you. So it's almost pretty... You have to make a series of mistakes. Nobody wakes up one day and goes, I'm a gambling addict. Well, they might actually, and if you are a gambling addict, you should go. There's a lot of groups out there for you. I'll put some in the show notes. But you know what I mean? Like, nobody is just like, they're 20 years old, everything's going great, and then they walk out their door and they say, you know what, I'm going to blow $50,000 this weekend on sports bets, on online sports betting. No, it's just like any drug. There's a series of decisions you make. Good, some pay off, right? Most don't. And then the next thing you know, you're lying to your family, you're lying to your friends, you're stealing from your work, you owe the wrong people money, and you've basically created you've created a psychic vortex around yourself that if a strong enough demon who's watching all of this stuff can then latch onto you. That's really where it comes from in Christian lore. So you see what I mean? Like, there's a lot of things that have to go wrong for someone to get possessed by a demon, or for someone whose life is going to become heavily influenced by demonic events. You can either ask for it, and it doesn't always happen, or you can make a series of bad events, and that doesn't always happen as well. You might just have to struggle with gambling addiction for a long time. From what I understand with jinns, that they can leave money around your house. We did that story about that family, and the mom kept finding like $5 bills, and she's like, "Oh, this is awesome. What? Oh, I must have lost this. I don't know where this came from." And then the kids start finding $20 bills, and the mom's like, I know that's not right. I know I haven't lost that much money." And they would appear in places that people really wouldn't have much access to, especially holding money. Money found in your couch is one thing. They were finding them like tucked away in books and stuff like that. And it turns out that there was a Jinn in the house that was leaving the money. And basically, if you took the money and you spent it, well, thanks, I'm part of your family now. I'm part of your life. And they were supposed to they burned all the money. And it wasn't money they lost. It's not like they were out any money. This was extra money they were finding. They talked to the imam, and he's like, "Dude, I know that you found all this money. The kids are eating all these snacks." He's like, "Oh, no. Did they buy that with the cursed money?" And the mom's like, "Yeah, they found a couple of 20s. Burn it. Burn it all. It's Jinn money. This is a way that it will invite itself into your life." Far more sinister. Far, far more sinister in that aspect, because who doesn't want to find a couple extra bucks every now and then? And I was like, what if that's what this is? And the thing is, too, is this is completely anonymous. We get stories from the X board, we get stories from Reddit, and then we get a ton of stories from like news articles and things like that, stuff we're investigating. But with the Reddit stories, I can kind of look at their life in general, like what they post on, what they talk about outside of posting the story. This guy could have had the best life in the world, or he could be wondering why it sucks, and he doesn't realize he invited a Jinn in. And what's interesting too is from what we can tell in this story, he got money. He went and told his friend about it. Him and his friend went back to the lot. They got money, the two of them, and then the phenomenon never continued, as far as he knows. And it was almost like it wanted two. It wanted two victims. If this is Jinn related, you know what I mean? Like it got Todd. And then after it also got Todd's friend, the phenomenon ceased. It got what it wanted. I think it's interesting too, because I don't know nothing about Todd. But Todd does seem like a stand-up guy in this story, right? He gets $7.34, and what's the first thing he does? He goes to his friend's house and says, "Get your little brother and sister, we're going to go get some candy." So by giving the money away, by spending it so selflessly, that might have alleviated any curse that these coins might have had. But when they went back the second time, when him and his friend went back the second time and took the money, we don't know how they spent that money. They could have spent that money, quote unquote, selfishly. They're little kids. They buy candy for themselves. But that could have been enough for this. If it's Jinn related, 100%, this is how it could enter into the life of people. And it's interesting to think, if his life has been great, then, he just found a couple coins. Maybe it was a vortex. If he's been struggling off and on over the years, and if his buddy, he's like, "Man, my buddy's had a really rough go of it ever since that afternoon at the trailer park and all those pennies," you think was a Jinn attached to those. And by taking those coins and using them on yourself, did you now invite a evil entity into your life? Interesting story. I mean, it really would be, one of those two things. Of course, I shouldn't say that. In the world of paranormal, it could be absolutely anything, falling in alternate realities. It could also be some neighborhood weirdo, right? Throwing pennies around. It could honestly be a whole bunch of different things. I shouldn't just say it should be two things. But it did remind me, first, of like a portal type effect. And then secondly, of a Jinn. So if you live in Indiana, just drive around randomly, confront a possible Jinn, take some money, figure it out. I'd be curious. Based on this photo, some people are really good at that geocacher game where it shows like a picture of something and you can guess what city it's in. The photo's in the show notes. There's like a tree next to it. There's a tree and there's a forest nearby. If you recognize these trees, you're like, "Jason, they tore the place down in 2018. They probably took down the trees as well." It's possible, though, that the phenomenon that happened here Even though you've destroyed the area, the structures, it should still be there. Aiden, let's go ahead and toss you the keys to the world famous Carpenter Copter. We are going to leave behind Indiana. Why don't you fly us all the way out to a seemingly normal house in a seemingly normal neighborhood. Aiden lands us at this house. We don't have the exact location for this story. We don't have the name of the young woman who posted this, but we'll go ahead and call her Felicity. Felicity, when she was 4 years old, her and her family moved in with her aunt and uncle. And the way that they decided the living arrangements is the aunt and the uncle lived upstairs in a 2-story house, while Felicity and her family, her mother and her father, they lived downstairs. But shortly after they all moved in, Felicity's mother began to notice something. Felicity's only 4 years old at this point, but she's developed this new habit. Every so often, Felicity's mother would find her at night, when she should be sleeping restfully in her bed. Mom would find Felicity upstairs. She'd just be standing up there. Honey, what are you doing up here? You should be in bed. Honey, come here. Let's go to bed. Mom would bring her back to the bedroom. She couldn't figure it out. Why she was doing that. Felicity really didn't know she was doing that, so you kind of have a guess. Well, one night, Mom stayed up late, and sure enough, she watched Felicity walk out of her bedroom and begin to walk up the stairs. She's sleepwalking. She had never sleptwalked before. It's not super alarming. I think you'd be more afraid if she was, trying to get outside, trying to go for a swim or cross the street. But it was odd. And Felicity had no idea she was doing this. They were living there for a while. When Felicity is 6 years old, one day she's sitting in her bedroom reading a book, and she hears, achoo! She hears someone sneeze. And Felicity, without missing a beat, goes, bless you. And she hears someone go, thank you. And that's when Felicity realizes she's the only one in the room. She said she actually got up and kind of looked around the house to see, was her dad walking by? Where was her mom? There was no one else nearby when that exchange happened. Several months later, after that sneeze incident, she's watching TV with her dad in the living room, and her dad goes, hey, Felicity, why don't you go grab Pops a beer? Time to give Pops a good old cold beer. And Felicity's like, yeah, sure. But once she agrees to do it, she remembers now where he keeps his beer. There's a mini fridge in the basement, and she's always been scared of the basement. I mean, to be fair, who isn't scared of the basement other than dads? She said the basement was dark, it was old, it was unfinished. Like someone had tried to add an addition at some point and gave up. I mean, again, probably too scary. They're like, I think I'm just fine with how it looks now. It's all broken down. It's even worse than it was before the remodeling. Felicity had an interesting way to describe how the basement made her feel. I like this. She said, quote, it's almost indescribable. Like, as if something were extremely angry at you and wanted to pull you in and at the same time push you away. Unquote. That's a really interesting way to think about it when we think about these haunted places, because that could be part of that. People say they have an off feeling about a place. Something's off. They can't really describe it. If it's like, oh, no, I feel like when I go there, there's something that wants to get me. Like, I feel like I can't go there, something wants to get me. That would be the sense that you were feeling pushed away. And if you go, well, I really don't like going there, whenever I go there, it just feels really eerie. Like, there's something watching and waiting for me there. I don't want to go there. Those are very specific descriptions pull you in, like a watching you, almost like setting a trap, or push you away by making itself feel more menacing. But most of the time, just like in the story we covered with the trailer, people go, I don't know, it just feels weird, which is not a descriptor. It can mean so many different things, and I like this description she gave. She, despite that, right, she's like, oh, she's all sweating. She's like, oh man, why did I agree to go get that beer? She says, I gotta go get it for him. I already said I would. She goes, I'm walking down the stairs to the basement, and I have the sudden urge to look to my left, which is where some remodeling had started before they lived there, and then ended, unfinished. She goes, I had this urge to look to the left, and I turned and I looked, and there was like a hole in the wall where this remodeling had started. She goes, I turned and I looked, and I saw a pair of red glowing eyes peering out at me in the darkness. So Felicity freaks out. She screams. She runs up the stairs, totally losing it. And Dad, to his credit, goes downstairs. Not to get his own beer. When she comes up and saying, there's something down there. I saw these red eyes. He thinks, his first inclination is there's something down there. And then he starts thinking, maybe it's a wild animal. Something scared my little girl. So he goes down there and he checks, but he didn't see anything. About a week after that, Felicity said she saw a shadow-like figure walking around down in the basement. She was like walking by the basement, the doors open, she looked down and she saw this. Felicity said she has a vague memory, almost a whisper of a memory, that something happened upstairs. And she said, although I can never figure it out, I have no idea what happened. If I try to think about it or if it pops in my head, she begins crying. She doesn't know why she's crying. She doesn't know what happened, but she believes something did happen. And she'll get very, very emotional if she's reminded of it. At age 10, Felicity and her family move away. 6 years in a house that the experiences she does remember, while creepy, aren't anything particularly notable. You wonder what she doesn't remember, and your mind can fill in the blank of all sorts of ghastly ghouls and creepy supernatural entities up there. But she doesn't remember. You probably don't do it in front of her. She's sobbing. You're like, was it a killer clown? She's like, I don't know. You're like, what about a bunch of gremlins? She's like, I don't know. You build a model of her house, and she goes, and you go, so here's a little action figure of you walking up the stairs. She's like, why are you doing this? You're like, okay, let's stop doing it. Let's relax. Let's watch the people under the stairs. She's like, ha ha ha. Listening to Stairway to Heaven. Pretty mundane stuff as far as hauntings go. What makes this story stand out is something we rarely see in paranormal. It's not that it never happens. It does happen from time to time, but it is quite rare. Age 10, Felicity and her family moved out, but the hauntings continued. In their new home, this story had another chapter to be added to it. We don't know when she posted this. This story was posted on phantomsandmonsters.com, and they got it from Lon Strickler. He posted this on Phantoms and Monsters. I don't think she's like 13 now. I'm assuming she's an adult. So I don't know if this activity has taken place over the past 10 years or it's ramped up recently. I'm not for sure as far as the timeline, but the hauntings have continued according to Felicity, but in a different way, almost a different venue, you might say. For years, it's not every night, but for years Felicity has been having a reoccurring dream. Or nightmare would probably be more apt. She says, I'm dreaming that I'm in that old house. And she goes, after we moved out, I never went back. I never went back to that house after we moved out when I turned 10. She goes, but in my dream, I'm in that house, I'm upstairs, and I'm in the upstairs kitchen. And I begin walking through the house towards my aunt and uncle's bedroom. I open the door. My aunt and uncle, they had this bedroom. They had their bed, of course, and they had all their other furniture, like, what are those things at the end? Dressers? I don't own any of this stuff. Dressers. What are those little things that you put next to a bed that you put a lamp on? Wooden lamp holder boxes. They had those. Probably a chair. I think some people have chairs in their bedrooms, right? So you can, like, sit down, but you don't want to lay down because you might take a nap. You know, furnishings. I do not have furnishings in my bedroom. I just have a bed and then boxes of stuff. Boxes of clothes. But these people had all these furnishings, this aunt and this uncle in their bedroom. But in the dream, the room is completely empty except for a bed. Felicity walks in and she starts walking towards this bed. It has what she describes as frilly Victorian era blankets and sheets. Not the kind of stuff that her aunt and uncle rocked. She goes, I walk into this bedroom and the only thing in there is the bed. It has these old-timey sheets, and I walk up to it and I pull back the blankets and there is the corpse of a woman laying in bed. She said, sometimes it's just the corpse of a woman. Which, I mean, that's bad enough, right? You're like, oh, just the corpse. That's not too bad of a dream. Sometimes it was just the corpse of a dead woman in a bed. She goes, sometimes I threw back the blankets and there was a coffin. A coffin, and it was opened, and inside the coffin was the corpse of a dead woman. So either way, you're getting the corpse. But either way, Felicity would look down at this dead woman, and that is when the corpse opened its eyes. And the dream would end. She wouldn't have that dream every single night, but it did reoccur. It did happen over the course of, I'm assuming, years. We don't know how old she is, but she didn't say this was recent in the past couple months. It would happen every so often. She'd have this dream. But every single time she had the upstairs dream, that very next night, she would have a dream about the basement. Felicity said, every single time I had the upstairs dream, I knew the very next night that I was going to have another nightmare. She had the dream about being upstairs. The next night, she's standing in that old house again. That old house that she had spent so many years in. And she's standing there, and the door to the basement is open, and she's looking into the basement. The stairs leading into the darkness. And she steps onto that first step, and then she wakes up. Later on, months, weeks, we don't know, she would have a dream about being upstairs, walking into the bedroom, seeing the corpse of this woman. The dead woman's eyes would open. Felicity would wake up. The very next night, Felicity had a dream. She was standing there, the door to the basement open. Felicity takes a step onto that first step. She takes another step to the second step. And she wakes up. She said that this pattern continued on and on. She would have the upstairs dream. The next night, she would have the basement dream. And each time she got a little bit further down the staircase, descending into the darkness. But, just a little further each time. And then she'd wake up. And actually looking through my notes here a little more carefully, apparently this is still going on. She posted this in August of 2024. You really couldn't get any more recent than this. She says, so I don't know what the time frame was between the dreams, but she says, recently, I have got to the bottom of the stairs. I've had these combination of dreams enough that I have now reached the basement. And I'm standing there in the darkness. And I see what I can only describe as a witch. That's the word she uses. She goes, I don't know if it's a witch, to be fair. She goes, I'm just kind of putting two and two together. She said, in the darkness, I can see a woman floating off of the ground. Frantic, wild hair. That's about it. That's about it. Surrounded by the pitch blackness of the basement, these are the only details that she's been able to make out so far. The idea of a haunting being able to follow you to a new location isn't... I mean, it has happened. When you look at ghost lore, things like that have happened, but it's extremely rare. It's extremely rare. It's not impossible. We covered a story not too long ago where a guy moved into a place and he was being haunted, and then that ghost went to the dude's work on his day off. And one of his coworkers saw the ghost and thought it was a dude, thought it was a guy walking around the workplace. He goes, hey man, when you weren't here on your days off, there was some dude standing outside it was like a boat. I think it was like one of those like boat trips where it was like 3 months on, 3 months off or something like that. And the coworker was like, dude, there was some big guy hanging out by your room the other day. And the guy's like, yeah, he had to tell the whole story. He's like, well, that guy doesn't actually exist. He's a phantom from my house. And then the coworker stopped talking to him after that. He goes, coworker never said another word to me. And it scared him. Scared the coworker. It's not that he thought his friend was crazy. He thought that there's a monster on board the boat. So it's very, very rare. Sometimes people will take a haunted item with them, and then that makes it easier for a ghost to follow. Sometimes it's not necessarily just a ghost, but it's some sort of possession or some sort of attachment. What's interesting is that she leaves the house, and you could argue, and to be fair, right, that the spirit did attach to her, but the dreams keep taking her back to the house. Even if a ghost attached to this little girl, the ghost doesn't want to leave the house. So that's an interesting little twist on it. Not like the haunted rocking chair that we talked about in yesterday's episode. This is something unique. And it feels like, it makes sense, right? We do know when we look at reports of this that ghosts can communicate with you. At least it seems to be this way. There's really no firm answers when it comes to a lot of this stuff, but ghosts seem to be able to communicate with you easier in your dreams. That's why when a loved one dies, it's far more common that you're going to have a dream, a very realistic dream about them, days or weeks or months after they die. And the dreams are almost always the same. Hey, I love you. Everything's going to be okay. I'm doing great. Don't worry about me, type of thing. And they always stand out from a normal dream. People wake up and they feel cleansed in a way. They feel a relief they hadn't felt since this person had passed on. So it would also make sense that a negative spirit could communicate with you through the dream. The question is, what is this one communicating? It's scaring her away from the house. If it wants her to come back to the house, she's not coming back. It's making that even more impossible. Let's say that she had these dreams and it was over the course of a couple years. It wasn't a common thing. Let's just pick a timeline and settle on years. But even if it was weeks or months, it wouldn't matter. You have to wonder, why did the ghost... Because the ghost can do anything in the dream, right? There definitely seems to be a scariness factor. It's like it wanted Felicity to dread reaching the bottom of the stairs. Why in the first dream did Felicity not just walk all the way down to the bottom of the stairs and see the witch? you could argue that the witch, and we don't know if that's what she is either, but you could argue that the witch is trying to intentionally build tension to horrify Felicity even more. And we do know that ghosts like to be scary. I'll put that episode in the show notes. There's been a couple comments by the dead saying that they want to scare people because being dead is so terrifying. They don't want people to be at peace. They want the living to be scared just like they are scared. Possible. It could also be that there was a necessity to build up a power level that this witch or this spirit, this ghost, this demon, whatever it is, couldn't immediately take Felicity all the way down the stairs. Over time, it had to build up its spiritual strength to be able to do that. Because we do see that with, it's very hard for a ghost to appear as a full body apparition. It's much easier for them to manifest a smell or a sound, which it can be hard as well. Smells is one of the quickest ways, and temperature drops. But to be able to actually appear in full and to speak, that takes a lot. So we don't know. But it's an interesting story. It's a terrifying story because it sounds like Felicity's not going to find peace anytime soon, unless she has a third party try to intervene, that being a spiritual advisor or psychic or something like that. I mean, personally, I would probably start looking into the history of the home, see if that gives you any sort of idea. Because if you're being haunted by a ghost, that's one thing. If you're being hunted by a witch, now you got a whole other set of problems, right? And the question is, what's the motive there? Why is it reaching out to Felicity? Why is it terrorizing her even after she leaves? And again, think about the amount of power you must have to haunt someone who's left your domain. But if I was Felicity, I would get help, and I would get help soon. Because there's no telling what the actual end game is here. The two dreams happening in succession over... I already think reoccurring dreams are bizarre enough. But the fact that you have two reoccurring dreams always happening one night and then the next night, and then the second reoccurring dream is like a continuation, like each time you get further and further down the stairs. Whatever this is, it's quite powerful, and it's either trying to terrify Felicity and really doesn't have any end game outside of scaring her, or it's trying to trap her in the basement. And not even the physical basement. I'm talking about a mental basement. This almost seems like a possession. There are secret societies that use rituals like this, descending the stairs or ascending the stairs. Has very, very powerful spiritual connotations. It's people who do hypnosis use this type of thing. We're going to walk down 13 stairs, and when you get to the bottom, you're going to be fully relaxed. First stair. Second stair. Third stair. You're all getting hypnotized. You're driving. You're like, woo! You're driving, crashing into a bunch of people. Sorry about that. But anyways, that's a very typical way to hypnotize someone. She needs to get help, and she needs to get help soon, because one of these nights, she may have these combination of dreams. The first one is a dead woman coming back to life, opening its eyes like the living does. Second dream is Felicity walking down these stairs one at a time, until we've already gotten... So we're already in the basement. She's already completed that part of the ritual. Now she's in the basement and she's seeing this figure. And one of these days, it's possible that she will have this combination of dreams and she will be in that basement and she will see the frantic wild hair. She will see the woman who's floating just a few inches off the ground in this basement, and Felicity is overcome with all of that terror that she knew she was going to feel. Every time she has this dream, she knows the darkness has a purpose for her. But this time, she sees the witch floating towards her and then through her, and then Felicity turns and she looks up at the top of the staircase, and standing there at the doorway is the woman. And the woman slams the basement door shut. Felicity wakes up, and she feels like $1,000,000. She has not had such a great sleep in God knows how long. She kind of stretches in bed, looks around, takes in her surroundings. But it's not Felicity in this body. This witch has taken over. Now has full control of Felicity's flesh. While the real Felicity is trapped in the darkness of the basement. Not a basement of brick and wood, but a basement in Felicity's own mind. Felicity will be trapped in that pitch black darkness, the basement of her own soul, screaming out, begging for help. But this time, her father can't save her. DeadRabbitRadio@gmail.com is going to be our email address. You can also hit us up at Facebook.com/DeadRabbitRadio. TikTok is @DeadRabbitRadio. Dead Rabbit Radio is the daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime podcast. You don't have to listen to it every day, but I'm glad you listened to it today. Have a great